Here's the story we got from Mediaite. Joe Scarborough calls on J.B. Pritzker to seek Trump's help to stop Chicago crime. Well, you've lost MSNBC, I guess. But this is the rumor that's been circulating, that Donald Trump will be deploying the National Guard into Chicago. And as someone who spent 23 years, I left formally when I was 23. That's when I really moved out. I've been back periodically since. Someone who spent 23 years of his life growing up in this city, literally in the city. And oh boy, do these lefties really just lie to try and win brownie points. I say, please, Donald Trump, fix my city. You know what's funny is what these liberals have been doing. They say Tim Pool's not from Chicago. He's from several hours outside of the city. These people are evil. It is absolutely wild. Let me just tell you, I grew up near Archer and Cicero. It's the city's southwest side. It's a really working class area, a lot of firefighters and police because it's cheap, and you have to live in the city if you're going to work for the city. In this area, there is gang violence. We had an area that was pretty bad, I will leave unnamed, where gangs, largely groups of young black males were the gangs, although we had Latin kings and otherwise. Vice lords, 2-6, four-corner hustlers, the popes, the disciples, a lot of Catholic gangs, I guess. Anyway, a lot of violence. I had friends who had witnessed corpses being dragged to the street. I myself had been shot at randomly for no reason. Me and my brother driving in our car, and someone just fired at us. The high school in my area, I went there for about 2 months. A fight broke out, and one of the guys brought a gun. These are common occurrences. That's Chicago. And because I can say that and say that's how I grew up and we shouldn't live this way, what does the left do? They start lying and spreading rumors saying Tim actually isn't from the city, which is wild because my friends from the city work here. And I go and hang out in my old neighborhood sometimes, for the holidays. But that's what they have to do. That way, when they go to these political debates, they tell liberals, don't listen to Tim Pool. He didn't actually grow up in the city like we did, to try and discredit what I have to say. But I have a lot to say. So, my friends, we're going to be joined by, I believe we got Larry Elder in wait. Let's bring him in and have this conversation with him. I also want to talk about the flag burning stuff and the potential rumors that Trump will be dispatching the National Guard, not just to Chicago, but other places. So we'll boot this up. Let's see. Sounds like it's working. Let's make sure it is. And bring in Larry Elder. I've been gone for a few weeks. Larry, can you hear me?
Hear you fine.
Excellent. Thanks for joining me. Let me try and adjust the levels a little bit here and bring in. How you doing, man? Good to hear from you.
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I've been out for a few weeks. There's a lot that I want to talk to you about. But the big rumor right now, I don't think it's true, but there is something to talk about. Donald Trump will be deploying National Guard to Chicago, is the rumor. And they say that he's going to make that announcement in an hour or so. I don't think that's the case. Carolyn Levitt said that it's related to the Department of Defense. But in the past couple of weeks, there's been discussion about Donald Trump sending National Guard troops to 19 different cities.
Right.
Chicago being the most notable. Curious your thoughts. Is this fascism, authoritarian overreach?
It's called trying to do something about urban crime that nobody seems to care about. I hope it's true. I hope he deploys troops in places like Chicago. And by the way, while Chicago has the honor of being the murder capital of the world, of the country in terms of absolute number of murders, it is not even close in terms of per capita. St. Louis is worse. Baltimore is worse.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. is worse. And Birmingham is worse. And let me just say something quickly, Tim, about Birmingham. Right now, as we speak, there's a man named Damian McDaniel on trial for allegedly killing 18 people.
Wow.
He happened to be black, as are virtually every single one of his alleged victims. Nobody is talking about it. He's on trial as we speak. It's a big deal locally, but nationwide, nobody cares. And the answer is nobody gives a rip about black on black crime. If this guy gets convicted, he will be the deadliest mass killer in the history of Birmingham. He did it over a period of 2 years. Nobody knows his name because the media could not give a rip. Right now, Chicago, Labor Day weekend, over 50 people shot. I think about 7 people killed. Nobody gives a rip. Donald Trump cares, but Donald Trump allegedly hates black people. I thought Black Lives Matter. I guess Black Lives only matter if they're taken by white cops. If they're taken by other black people, nobody cares.
Yeah, we saw this Gallup poll a few years ago that stated in the black communities, these actual neighborhoods, it was like 80% said, please give us more cops. This was during the defund the police cycle or whatever you want to call it. And I'm from Chicago. I left for a variety of reasons, one of which largely is the crime and the corruption. So when I hear that Trump wants on the National Guard, I can tell you right away, like my friends, my family would be like, awesome. Maybe we don't have to worry about all of these murders. But you know what's fascinating? You bring up no one cares about black on black crime. It's been a trope. It's been a joke. And sitcom, Family Guy made fun of it. I was doing some research on this, and I used everyone's favorite ChatGPT and asked it because we had this other mass shooting at the Catholic school, and it told me that white men are the biggest perpetrators of mass shootings. And then I asked it about Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, and D.C., and it's fascinating to see how Google, these AI platforms, they omit the black on black mass shootings that happen all too often, that are the majority of your general mass shooting, that is 4 or more individuals.
Right.
And then they blame white people for it. I'm like, hold on, how are we going to solve the problem of mass shootings that the liberals claim they want to solve? I think we want to solve too, when they ignore the majority of it and claim it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah, you remember the D.C. sniper, those 2 people that were mowing down people a few years ago in Washington, D.C.? Turns out they had been stopped several times by the cops, but some FBI profiler said that the likely perp will be a white male, so they were let go. The fact is that whites are around 60% of the population, but they commit roughly 50% of the mass shootings. Blacks are about 14% of the population, but they commit about 17, 18% of the mass shootings. So in terms of population, whites are underrepresented when it comes to mass killings. Blacks are overrepresented, by the way, as are Asians. So it's just not true. Fact is that 60% of the burglaries, the robberies, and the shootings in America are committed by black people, often against other black people, which brings us to the reason why, Tim. The reason why is the epidemic of fatherlessness. Even Barack Obama once said, if you're raised without a father, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Fact is, 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home married to the mother. It is a massive, massive problem that neither Republicans nor Democrats are talking much about.
Why is that? I mean, I've heard a lot of the talking points, the expansion of the welfare system and things like that, but I'm curious your thoughts on why it is that there's so many fatherless young black men.
It's the welfare state. You look back in 1965, 25% of blacks entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. That number now has almost tripled. If you look at the welfare state, the so-called war on poverty launched by Lyndon Johnson, and look at the amount of money that's spent and the increase of fatherless homes, they almost parallel each other. What they've done is incentivize women to marry the government and incentivize men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. The out-of-wedlock birth rate in the white community has also tripled since 1965. So it's not just affecting blacks, it's affecting everybody. And what we need to do is rethink the welfare state, but that's an unpleasant conversation. The left doesn't want to do it because they created the problem, and Republicans often don't want to do it because they fear that they'll be accused of racism or somehow demeaning single women who are heroically raising these boys and girls by themselves.
It's funny. It's controversial, but Kanye West, the arc that he went on, there were a few points he had made early on before he kind of went. He's kind of gone off in a very bad direction. I'll put it like that. But but here's absolutely. But here's the thing. He made a few points early on. One was he had tweeted something like "abolish the 13th Amendment" or "we need to abolish it," and the media lied about his intention. His point was the 13th Amendment says in it, slavery is acceptable if someone's been duly convicted of any crime. And he was talking about the high rates of incarceration of black people in this country, and the media lied about it. But aside from that point, back to the crime and the issues here and fatherlessness, he had made a point that these record labels were promoting gang culture and violent culture to young black men through pop music, as well as degeneracy and sexual deviancy. He had several years ago, it's maybe like 10 years ago, he was doing these Christian Sunday services, he called it. He was trying to get people to be more involved in religion and things like this. Unfortunately for Ye and for people around him, he misunderstood why this was happening and where it was going, and he blamed the Jews for why there was this culture happening. But I bring this up because there is an interesting point in there is a pop culture that targets young black men and women with songs and rap about being violent, being in gangs, stealing, and things like this. Do you think that culture plays a role in telling these young men who to be?
I really don't. Most of this stuff, this gang stuff, this rap stuff, is purchased by and enjoyed by white kids in the suburbs. They're not committing the kind of crime that I'm talking about. The breakdown in the family is what's going on. A mother and a father shield you from this kind of nonsense, tells you what your values are. So you're not going to be infected by somebody rapping something stupid like some of these rap people do. Look, even Tupac Shakur once said, I know for a fact had I had a father, I would have been more disciplined. I would have been more confident. Denzel Washington has also talked about this. He talked about how he grew up in Mount Vernon, and while his parents were divorced, he had a father who was actively involved in his life. His friends did not, and he has friends who are right now in prison. So, you're finding people really talking about the truth, but the media and the Democrats do not want to, because they want black people to be perceived as victims in need of social justice. And by the way, we wear the white hat in the fight for your social justice. So go in there and pull that lever for us, vote for us. That's why they do it.
That's an interesting point you make. I didn't know that about young suburbanite white people buying this gang culture rap music stuff.
Yeah, most of the rap music is purchased by white people. But these rappers could not get wealthy if it weren't for white kids in the suburbs buying all this stuff. They're the ones that love this.
You know why it's easy to believe. So when Brandon Johnson got elected in Chicago, everyone was talking about how the socialist mayor won, and I looked at the electoral map of Chicago. And unsurprisingly, it was all by race. The white areas voted for the white guy, the Latino areas voted for the Latino guy, and the black neighborhoods voted for the black guy. But there were numerous candidates, so I'll clarify. White areas voted for a white candidate, Latino for a Latino candidate, black areas. The top three candidates in the black neighborhoods were all black, even if they weren't the front runners, which is interesting. Now, Brandon Johnson wasn't the front runner among the black community in Chicago. There was one neighborhood that got Brandon Johnson over the edge to win, and that was the Loyola University area, where young white socialists voted for Brandon Johnson, giving him the edge and getting him elected. In fact, it is these white, uppity suburbanites that voted for the socialist candidate, who now, I don't know if you saw the video, is saying they should fight back against Trump if he deploys National Guard.
Yeah. Let me say something about that. A state senator from Illinois named Barack Obama challenged an incumbent Democrat named Bobby Rush, a former Black Panther, for Congress. And Obama got his clock cleaned. It turned out that urban blacks, poor blacks, did not vote for him, voted for the other guy. Jews voted for him. Wealthy people voted for him. So Obama went back and redesigned his state Senate district. There's an article about this in ProPublica called Obama's Gerrymander, about how he redesigned his district to make it less black, more affluent, more white, more Jewish, because that's where his supporters were. Hello.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's what we see. It's the, what do they call it? Affluent white female liberals leading the charge for a lot of these leftist policies and socialist policies. And that's what you end up with.
And that, Tim, is why Trump has done so well with blacks. About 20% of black males voted for him this time, because they're seeing this. The number one group most hurt by illegal immigration are black people with high school or less living in the inner city, because they have to compete against illegal aliens for jobs. And the presence of illegal alien labor puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $1,800 a year on the salaries. This was before Joe Biden allowed in 10, 15, 20 million, however many it was over the last 4 years. So blacks are the most hurt by this. Black people living in the inner city are getting a very poor education. There are 13 government schools in Chicago where 0% of the kids can do math and can read at grade level. There are over 50 in Illinois altogether where 0% of the kids can do math or can read at grade level. So they're the ones that are most hurt by the failure to have school choice, which Democrats do not want, because the number one funder typically is the teachers union. So the people that are most hurt by Democrat policies are the very black people that have traditionally gone in there like lemmings and pulled the lever for the Democrat Party.
Do you think if we got rid of this welfare system, it would end this, or is there some kind of transition period where you'd need some kind of hybrid or system or something?
Yeah, you can't just cut people off right away. But look, at one time, things like this were handled by nonprofits, by churches, by people donating. And when government stepped in, people began donating less. During the Great Depression, donations shot up substantially. But then when FDR did his New Deal, donations still went up, but not quite as sharply because people felt that they gave at the office. There's no reason to believe that if we didn't have a welfare state by government, Americans would allow other Americans to die and suffer. We wouldn't do that. We're the most compassionate people on the face of the earth. We give more money than any other nation. So that's what we would do if we didn't have the welfare state. But by having no questions asked welfare, what you're doing is simply making things worse. There was a poll back in 1986, LA Times 10, where people on welfare were asked, is welfare a stepping stone towards self-dependency, or is it a crutch that makes you dependent? More of them said crutch than they said a stepping stone towards independence. So these are people on welfare telling you it's a trap.
Well, now I think, what's going on with SNAP. I think the Trump administration has enacted some kind of policy. You got to have community service. A bunch of videos started popping up where you can't buy cookies and candies anymore. And there's videos of women trying to buy snack cakes and their EBT and things are getting rejected. So right. It looks like the Trump admin, this it's happening. The culture is kind of waking up to this. But I do want to add, too.
Can we just say about that? 1996, Bill Clinton changed welfare as we know it. He ran in 1992 promising to do that, didn't do it. But his advisors told him, if you don't do something, you're not going to get reelected in 1996. So he, for the first time, put time limits on welfare and what were called children caps. So if you had additional children, you didn't get additional money, which was the case in the past. Welfare rolls declined by 50%, a far steeper decline than anybody predicted. And there wasn't a corresponding increase in abortion. A bunch of able-bodied people and able-minded people got off the couch and went to work because they had to. And little by little, we put those, we've loosened those restrictions. And what Donald Trump is doing is trying to put them back. So if you're on Medicaid and you're able-bodied, you don't have children, there's a certain amount of hours per week you have to work in order for you to continue getting benefits. And this is a good thing.
You mentioned donations in the church and things like that as well. I think another huge component that extends beyond the black community, this country as a whole, is the loss of religion. And I say this as somebody, I'm not a Christian. I do believe in God. I don't know what I am, but there's a word for it somewhere. And people, I'll have atheists question me and say, like, how would you defend that or whatever? I say, listen, the issue that I'm bringing up is not about whether or not someone has faith in Jesus Christ, although I know that Christians believe that to be the most important thing, or one of the most important things. I'm not going to speak for Christians. The issue is community, that we would come together once a week and sit down with each other in the same space.
Right.
The church was the charitable arm to protect the community when it could. And we had trust and faith in each other as well. But now nobody congregates and nobody meets. And so you have across the board in this country, police officers that say, listen, I don't know you, just go to court. You've got criminals who say, if I steal from you, nothing bad will happen to me because I don't know you. And this is the problem we're experiencing, where people are not concerned with wronging their neighbor because there will be no social repercussions.
Tim, this has been studied. There's a book called Who Really Cares, written by a guy named Arthur Brooks. Arthur Brooks was a professor of public policy at Syracuse. He wasn't particularly conservative or liberal, but he found out that nobody ever did a study to find out whether or not conservatives were more generous with their time, with their money, versus liberals. He assumed the answer was going to be liberals. So he did a whole study, got the conclusions, got rid of all the people that did the conclusions because he didn't believe it, hired another people. They came with the same conclusions. It turns out conservatives were far more generous with their money and their time than liberals. And it turned out for two reasons. The first is that conservatives believe that help for people should be done people to people, not government to people. But the second factor, and more important factor, is conservatives were more likely to be religious than liberals. Religious people give way more money, way more time than do non-religious people. Religious liberals gave the same amount of money as religious conservatives. There were just far fewer of them. So it turns out that if you're more religious, you're more compassionate, you're more caring, you give more time, you give more money to people. For that reason alone, religion is positive.
I think it's fascinating to think. I want to approach this completely just objectively. Would Chicago rather have gang culture or Christianity? The neighborhoods that I grew up on, I just tell you, it's very simple. I grew up in the southwest side of Chicago, and there were areas that we had a street, 47th Street. Just north of it, everyone was black. South of it, it was largely like white working class with some Latino. And that division, whether intentional or otherwise, created two separate communities where people distrusted each other. There were a lot of gangs. If someone came to me and said, this is a liberal Chicago, a lot of atheists, we want Christian missionaries to go into this and start, I'd say, oh, thank you. Thank heavens. Yeah. I would much rather have Christian culture, and it's a no-brainer. But it's fascinating because there are many, atheist liberals who spend their days blaming religion for everything, blaming Christianity for everything, saying that Christianity is bad and that these values should be removed from government. Right. And I'm just wondering, have you ever been to a church? I mean, look, you might not like what they believe or whatever, but I'd much rather have a bunch of people singing songs, clapping, and being bigoted, whatever the liberals think about it. Oh, they have bad views, than gangs shooting at each other.
Of course, Tim. And a few years ago, as you know, I did a documentary called Uncle Tom, where I talked about how the Black community continued to grow after slavery, even though there was Jim Crow, even though there was a KKK. In 1940, 87% of Blacks lived under the poverty level. 20 years later, 1960, that number had fallen to 47%, a 40-point drop in 20 years. The greatest 20-year period of economic growth in the history of Black America. Why? Because it was rare for a Black kid to be brought into the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, a strong belief in entrepreneurship, a strong belief in American values, even if those values were not being applied fairly to Black people, and more importantly, a strong belief in Judeo-Christian values. Most Black people went to church. That is completely broken down, again, as a function of the breakdown of the nuclear intact family. Less likely to be going to church, your mom and dad less likely to take you, and therefore the kids are less likely to be religious and less likely to learn the kinds of values that religion can put into your brain, make you behave responsibly.
Yeah, we had a show a few years ago with Seamus Coughlin. He's the Freedom Tunes guy. He's a devout Catholic. And we talked about the 10 Commandments as an objective path towards successful life. Mm-hmm. Now, I grew up Catholic briefly, and I believe, being heavily influenced in Chicago by just general liberal atheism. Had my atheist, angsty teen years. I don't consider myself Christian today. But I think if you look at the 10 Commandments objectively, it's a great path towards a functioning society and a good life. Honor your parents. Don't steal. Don't kill. These things, if they are taught to children and upheld by their elders and those who inspire and motivate, will bring you to a more successful culture than having no father, being told that all that matters is getting yours. Right. And that's what I saw when I grew up. The kids in my neighborhood who joined gangs were told, no one's going to help you, no one's there for you, and you got to be hard. So you got to take what's yours or else. And these gangs would go to these kids and they'd say, they'd give them guns and say, go kill our enemies. Don't worry, you'll only go to jail till you're 18. That's the message they were being given, instead of honor your parents, do not steal, do not kill. I would prefer that. I would prefer these kids were told by a mentor, it's better to have faith and follow these. Even if you don't believe these tenets will give you a better life. We're losing that. And it's fascinating that I've discussed with many people who, again, fans of mine, they're atheist. They have a visceral reaction against Christianity. And I say, I'm not a Christian, but objectively look at how much better things are with this worldview than the lack of.
Absolutely. And not only that, they're happier. People who are religious are happier than people who are not religious. Just as people who are married are happier than people who are not married. And there's a reason for this. If you don't feel that you're a victim, if you feel that you're loved by a higher power, you're much more likely to be happy. So for all these reasons, they're more generous, they're more charitable with their time, with their money, they're happier. There are a lot of reasons to be religious beyond a belief in a higher being.
Sure. I think, too, it's purpose. I think a lot of these young men have no purpose. They have no sense of a mission. And you know what I see, not with literally every religious person, and I don't just mean Christianity, but I find that many individuals who follow a faith feel like they have some kind of divine task, that something is expected of them from a higher power that they must fulfill, and that it feels good to be on a mission. A lot of the guys I knew growing up with, they're like, what's the point of anything? Why am I even here? I don't even know or care. And then the people I knew who were religious were like, I have a mandate from God. I must be a good person. I must be a good leader. I must help my community. You know, being part of something bigger, I feel like it inspires people to be better. And we are losing that as a nation across the board. I think that's resulting in a lot of the political turmoil. It's resulting in society is becoming more and more trustless, a low trust society, they call it. And whether or not, you know, actually, I'll put it this way. While I do think the National Guard deployment would be a good thing, it worries me that we're at the point where we need it. Yeah. And reversing the problems that led to this request of a National Guard is not going to be related to a National Guard. It's going to be a cultural change. But we have this culture war going on where there's two distinct worldviews. And one, it's hard to say, but it looks objectively evil, you know?
I think it is.
Yeah.
You know, there are all sorts of stories people have that illustrate what you just now said about religion. I have a friend who works at an insurance company, and her boss told her that when he was a kid, he was crying. He was 2 or 3 years old, and his father was out of his life, and his mother broke his jaw. Social services found out about it, investigated, and didn't take him away from her. About a year or two later, he was crying. His mother broke his arm. This time, social services came and took him away from her. And he was in a series of foster homes for a number of years, angry at the world, angry at life, had no purpose, didn't care about school. And then one time, a Catholic priest came to one of the foster homes where he was staying. And he said, you know, God has a purpose for everybody. Everybody has a mission. Everybody has a talent. Everybody has a strength. And it was in one ear and out the other. He walked up to the priest afterwards and told him what I told you. He said, what's my purpose? What's my strength? What's my value? And the priest said, don't you see? You survived it. You're standing here in front of me. You survived a mother who broke your jaw, a mother who broke your arm, a father out of your life, and you're still standing here. That is your strength. And you must use that and show other people how to be strong. And for whatever reason, Tim, it turned him around. Fast forward, the guy is now a senior executive making 7 figures at an insurance company.
Wow.
Had he not had that conversation, who knows how his life would have turned out.
Isn't it funny how the logic was there the whole time?
Yeah.
He had suffered tremendously and survived it and said, what's my strength? And it's like, you've proven it. You have survived
there, in front of
this.
You. Open your eyes. It's right there.
I love these stories, man. And, you know, it breaks my heart to see the wasted potential of so much of humanity.
Right.
You know, Elon Musk talks about the population crisis. We need more people, but we you know, many people haven't had kids. I recently had a kid. It's late, and what's always it gives me a sadness is to see there are tens of millions, hundreds of millions of human beings of tremendous potential that struggle to reach it. Yeah. If not for just that single sentence that could tell them, like that story you told me.
You know, this is going to sound self-serving, but I was telling this to my pastor. I'm 73 years old, and from time to time, I thought about retiring. I have enough nuggets put away. I could do that if I wanted to, but I can't. I'll tell you why. I ran for governor in 2021. I'm in an airport, and this black man walks up to me. He's about 35, 40 years old, very well dressed, and he says, "I cannot believe I'm meeting you. You've changed my life. I grew up without a father. I was angry. I was blaming everything on racism. I started listening to your radio show, and I couldn't stand you at first. But little by little, I realized you were telling me to get off my butt, play the card to the best of my ability. I'm now a senior executive at Merrill Lynch. About a quarter of all the officers report to me. Had it not been for you and for the way you encouraged me, I don't think I would be here." And he cried, hugged me, and we took pictures. I mean, wow. I get that all the time, Tim, all the time. And I know I've made a difference. And so that is my goal. I'm very religious. I have a pastor named Pastor Jack Hibbs, who I admire a great deal. And I do feel I have a higher purpose. And I think it gives me a spring in my step.
It's, I liken it to lighting that spark, the fire within people. There's I feel similarly why, I speak passionate about what I believe. There are so many people that just need that hand on the shoulder and it lights them up and then they find their path. Hopefully, if, the National Guard comes in and can put a stop to this crime, it can create a path where people will feel safe and these conversations can happen. But we need a cultural shift if we're really going to solve these problems. But
No
Larry,
question about it. No question about it.
I appreciate you joining me. Where can people find you?
At Larry Elder is my Twitter handle. I'm on from 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. live, based in Los Angeles, a nationally syndicated radio show. Just go to my website, larryelder.com, and check out the show. I've also written a bunch of books. My last one is called As Goes California, my mission to rescue the Golden State to save the nation. And I've done a couple of documentaries, including Uncle Tom 1 and Uncle Tom 2. So I'm available. I write a weekly column once a week. I've written about 1,400 columns once a week since April of 1998. So The man has been busy.
Right on. You're a legend, man. I really do appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
God bless. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good one.
You too.
Absolute legend, Larry Elder. He hits the nail on the head with the hammer so much. I'll say one quick thing as we move on, and we're going to be obviously sending you guys on your way to the next show, which I believe we should have Russell Brand usually. But, of course, I'm just back from a few weeks out. So, the one thing I want to say is there's Russell Brand's gearing up. We'll get you guys ready to go. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow a faith structure. I don't follow Christianity, anything like that. And there are people who are, they accuse people in this space of being grifters. There are some people who were liberal atheists who converted. Russell Brand converted. I think it's fantastic. I approach it mathematically and logically. And I'll say it again. We are better off with a faith-based Christian nation than we are with a secular atheist one. They want to pretend that the secular atheist society is flying spaceships and, the Jetsons or whatever. There were memes when I was a teenager of what the world would be like without religion, and it shows flying cars and all that stuff. We are learning right now what we actually end up with, and it is a low-trust society, violence and crime. I'm not saying, in my view, that Christianity is the perfect solution. I'm saying where I grew up, I would much rather have the young men in my community singing choir songs in a church. Maybe you find them to be bigoted, whatever. I get along with those people even when we disagree. It's like, okay, they're not killing people. I would prefer that over the low trust gang and violence and crime that we ended up seeing. So by all means, tell me you think there could be something better. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm just saying, as we see religion on the decline across the board, all religions, we can see this low trust fragmenting of society, which is worrying to me. But I'm going to get you guys on your way to go hang out with our good friend, Russell Brand. I am back, of course. Was sick for several weeks. It was miserable, but it is absolutely amazing to be back. So follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Join us at timcast.com, our Discord server. We need you there. And join our newsletter at timcast.com. Of course, we got Cast Brew Coffee. We got Boonies HQ. And I got a new YouTube channel, youtube.com/@timpool. This one's going to be random nonsense. For the people who just want to hang out, it'll be less specific, but more content to come. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all tonight at Timcast IRL.